Hello, everyone. I'm Gemma Star, and welcome to another episode of MANSPEAK. In this series, I've been inviting some of our heart warriors back on to talk about topics that are near and dear to their heart. Mental concepts, emotional concepts, physical practices, we've got the whole range going on here and in future episodes. So today we've got our number 17 heart warrior back, who is Justin Carpenter. And Justin's going to speak about navigating the awakening. I was listening to Justin on his Telegram channel a few days ago, and he's had a live Q&A, and people were phoning in with lots of questions around this subject. And I just thought that the way he articulated and with so much clarity was definitely worth getting him back on for a show. So I hope this answers a lot of your questions that you may have, and enjoy the show. Hey, Justin, welcome back to MANSPEAK.
Hey, Gemma, thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.
Oh, always my pleasure. So I mentioned in my intro that I'd heard you speaking on Telegram regarding this subject, and it's such an important subject, so many important aspects to consider, no matter where people are on this, what we call the awakening. So in your opinion, what is the awakening and why is it happening now?
Well, the awakening is just us remembering who we truly are, remembering why we came here, remembering what we're here to do, which is not anything super specific, but it's to continue stepping into this physical creation and walking in alignment with it so that we could create more powerfully and create more beautifully and every which way. So somewhere along the way, we got kind of hijacked into this this whole experience where everything was dumbed down and we lost what that was. We lost who we are. We forgot completely, and we've just been in the deepest darkest depths for so long. And so this awakening is all about coming into that realization that yes, we were in the darkness, we were firmly in hell, and that's okay, because now we can get out of it. Now we can rise out of it and create heaven on earth. So this is a very prophetic time. This is a very it's a very important time, because this is a changing of the ages, a moving away from bondage and slavery and into freedom and sovereignty. So it is very important in that aspect. And yeah, that would be kind of my best take on what is the awakening. It's just remembering who we truly are.
Yeah, something so simple that, I think everyone can relate to when we look at it through those words. You started a TikTok channel, I saw, and you put a little clip on Facebook where you were asking some important questions to start with, such as, who am I? What am I doing here? What is this whole experience? What am I supposed to do with that? And what's the point of this game? What are your answers to those series of questions?
Well, so if anyone wants to look on TikTok, my name's at Justin_Carpenter, and I did want to kind of go into that space, because there's so much to we know a lot of the youth are there, and they love to spend their time in that space. So I want to come speak to them. I want to speak to more people and different demographics and different people who are all new to this. And so that was a wonderful branch into it. But that's where I felt was a good starting point, was just like, well, these are some basic questions that are age old. There are things that we often ask ourselves, philosophize about, but does anyone ever get to much of an answer with it? So I figured I'd take my best stab at it. And so who am I? Well, I'm a child of God. I'm a fragment of the one infinite creator, the creation that is all of this. I am a one infinite aspect of that. So I'm also a representation of that whole, because the same principles apply, the Hermetic principles, as above, so below. So because I am this, then so is the whole. And I am just an aspect of that. But what is this experience? Well, it's a game that we're playing where we pretend to be separate. There is no such thing as separation. We are all whole. We all stem from the same, But in order to add texture and vibrancy to this experience, we pretended that we're separate. So, however you want to conceptualize that, we conked ourselves across the head, added this sort of veil of forgetfulness, and pretended to be a separate entity so that I could walk in this space pretending to be Justin Carpenter, and then come back and find myself again. So come back and find this whole, it's like a game of it's like a scavenger hunt that we've left ourselves, but we're the goal is to know thyself. So it's all, and that's ultimately all that God is doing within this whole experience. You know, God is just the totality of all. God is everything. So we are all a part of that everything. And because what does God truly want within this experience? Well, it's just to further know thyself. And so, what better way to really know thyself than to split yourself into that many fragments and then be able to see yourself from infinite number of perspectives? So that's all we really are, is we're just an individualized perspective of the all. And so within that sort of framework of how this creation was set up, we can kind of see, okay, well, what's the purpose of me here? Why am I here? What am I supposed to do with this? And as I said in the video, it's really up to you, because this is all about us navigating this space that we've created and creating in as abundantly as possible, stepping into who we truly are, knowing that we are incredibly unique. There is no one out there that is just like us, that has the same life experiences, that has the same inclinations, that has the same passions and urges. All these things make us who we are. And so we're supposed to maximize that. So everything that we do within this experience is supposed to be, how can I elevate that purest sense of me, which is part of the totality, but I'm cherishing and honoring this individualized perspective, this separate sense of separation that's not necessarily real, but because I make it seem real, because I pretend it to be real, it adds much more of a fun experience. Because if I was just sitting here, knowing that I'm all one and I was just talking to myself, that's not nearly as fun of an experience as sitting here talking to Gemma, who is a much more, a very beautiful representation of me. But that's ultimately all that we're doing here, is we just have these varying perspectives and we're all coming together to kind of compare and share notes. But my individual task within that is to figure out what makes me tick and how can I walk in alignment with that? Because ultimately what makes me tick is where God is leading me. That's where he's given me. That's just the gift that I've been given, and I'm supposed to find it. I'm supposed to find these beautiful gifts that I have and then accentuate them in as many ways as I can. And walking in further alignment, I can do so. So that's kind of the objective of the game, if you will, is to find ways to maximize our creative potential, to find ways to where that I can walk in this space in more creative ways than I did before, and more experiential, beneficial ways than I did before. But I also mentioned on that video, kind of a caveat to this experience, or this sort of the bounds that we've introduced, or the sort of restrictions that we have. These are the karmic laws, things that prevent the game from self-destructing. Ultimately, that's what it's there for, because if we didn't have these karmic laws, well, I guess let me back up. So harm can only be introduced if you truly believe that you're separate. So if I 100% believe that I'm separate from something else, that's the only space that I can come from to harm another. So that's the kind of like, you could say it's kind of like the risk of playing this game, of believing that we're separate, is somehow I can get to this space to where I could harm myself. I could harm another aspect of me. And so because that sort of risk is known by playing this game, by dipping into this separation experience, then there needs to be some sort of correctional, some sort of bounds in place to make sure that harm does not spiral out of control. Because as we've seen, when people who are so possessed with their own sort of self-fulfilling desires, there's no limit to the length that they would go to pursue that selfish interest until they reach some sort of roadblock, until there's something that stops them one way or another. And that's always karma. There's always something that comes and stops that chain reaction of harm before it gets to the point of self-destruction. Now, because the people who have created this slave-based system, they're so firmly in that separation mindset, because again, you couldn't actually enslave an aspect of yourself if you didn't know that that was you. But because they believe wholeheartedly that that is something else to take advantage of and to enslave, um, they've created crafty ways to bypass the karmic laws, or to dilute them as much as possible, to get away from the repercussions as much as they can, because they know they exist, they know they're there, but they like to find the loopholes and find ways to get past them. So how did they do that? Well, they trick us into doing their dirty work. They trick us into following into their orders, and signing up for their their violence and pushing their agenda in whatever way, because we've somewhere along the way we've forgotten of our own power, we've forgotten of our own divinity, we've forgotten of our own connection to source, to God, and we've given our power to something else. And that's all, it's all part of the grand experience to get us back to this realization of who we truly are. So we had to experience this deepest and darkest of nights in order to come out of that. So all that to say that the karmic laws are what kind of provide a structure for this experience and keep it from self-destructing. So that's what we're going through within this awakening, is karma has eventually caught up to these people who have done all these things. It has caught up to the space to where they can't go any further. And now we're seeing the repercussions happen. But because they've convinced us to do their dirty work, because they've convinced us to be blind to all the atrocities committed, and even help them in ways, then we have to experience some of that karmic rebalancing, which, if you're not ready for that, is quite uncomfortable. And that's what we see with people who are not ready to hear anything that I'm talking about, or come into realization that this is what's going on. They're experiencing a sort of a painful realization within that. But that's all natural. It's all part of this rebalancing. And because ultimately that's all what karma does. That's not that God's up there, it's like, I'm going to punish you because I can. No, God just wants to preserve this creation, preserve this experience, because we want to preserve this experience. We created, this is all part of the same creation. So there's no desire for it to self-destruct. So we need these laws in place to keep it from getting to that point. So, yeah, I think that kind of covers the questions that you ask. I'll leave it with
Oh,
that.
beautifully, beautifully. And I know we've touched on it in other episodes, but I'd just like to, for this episode, get your definition when you use the word God, because a lot of people are dismantling from the religious system, and they're, well, hang on, I realize there's something that's not quite right there, that's controlling, and I'm coming here and we're talking about God. So can you just clarify that for us, Justin?
Yeah, God is totality. God is the void from which all came from. It's the centrality points from which all this experience has emerged. But ultimately, it's God is consciousness. So we're bestowed consciousness by coming here and having this experience. And so that means God is within us. God is working through us in this space, even when we forget, even when we really forget that we have that. God is always working through us. So God to me is, and God really doesn't give a shit what you call it. That's where people get hung up on the dogma, and there's an importance to reverence. I think we should treat things as sacred, because that helps us imbue a sense of importance and sacredity to everything in this whole experience. So I don't mean to make light of it, but at the same time, some people get really stuck on the terminology and the words used, and they might get triggered because I said that or this or whatever. But it doesn't matter what you call it. It is just this central point from which we came, and we didn't really even leave it. We just pretended to leave it. So we're just a representation of this central point that is everything. So we are. So yeah, that's kind of that.
Yeah, and I can totally testify to that, because even though I wasn't brought up religious, for the past maybe even 20 years, I had a real aversion towards using the word God, just because it had those religious connotations. And I used to use universe, source, divine consciousness, all the other terms that are just as relevant. And it's really only been this last 1 or 2 years that I've actually started integrating that word back into my conversation.
Nice. When
Um,
I think I think just before we leave that, I think there's something to, at least for me, it feels it there's a much more familial feel by using that terminology versus the universe or source or things of that nature. To me, there's, because God is ultimately our best friend. You know, he's this higher aspect of self. And I say he, there's no gender to this, is before gender, this is prior to duality, but he is just kind of an easier way to say. But he's always there for our best interest. So he's trying to lead us to that space of maximum potential where we can create in our best and highest self. So that constant, you know, urging, that's God trying to say, hey, like, do you want, you want to do this, right? Like, we wanted to do this. This was all part of the experience that we wanted to have. So I want to help you have the best version of that, because you want to have the best version of that. So I want to help align you with that. So there's really not a separation per se, but it does help to kind of have that relationship with all of all of that is, you know. So it's more personal. It's less of a seeming like, you know, uh, which I guess people can view the God word as if that's a white dude sitting on some far off distant planet as well. So that's not really feeling very familial as well. And that's what the church does, is they try and keep you separate from this all consciousness, so you don't feel like you have a connection with it. But when the complete opposite, you know, it couldn't be further from the truth. That is the epitome of connection. That's the epitome of you know, relationship and familiarity, is this all that we are connected to. It's God.
Yeah, and you know, part of the process of awakening is really coming into our own power. What do we feel is the right word to use for wherever we are and whatever truth we're aligning with? And that can shift. It doesn't have to be stagnant, you know, it's always moving. So, you know, it doesn't matter what anyone else's truth is. It's about feeling into our truth, what expands our heart, what gives us a sense of freedom, what do we feel aligned with? So, yeah, I loved how you wrapped all that up, Justin. Now, the last 2 years have been, well, is it 3 years now? Nearly 3 years? Gosh, yeah, wow. Time flies when you're having fun. Have been really tough on a lot of people and a lot of families that were even violently thrown into this situation, starting in 2020 with the lockdowns and the restrictions of freedom, and starting to understand that maybe we've been lied to. Maybe all these systems that we thought had our best interests at heart are actually not. They're working against us, so they're collapsing. But what can we replace that with? So this awakening process has been tough on the individual, but it's also been really tough on families who are at different stages. Where would you like to take this part of the conversation to cover that?
Well, yeah, I mean, it is, it's the toughest time for everybody. And I think that's a good thing to remember within this awakening, is it's supposed to be the hardest thing we've ever been through. I mean, we're literally going from the deepest, darkest pits of hell. You know what, we created that. We created that hell on earth, and it was there, and we were willing participants in this hell on earth. We were turning a blind eye to the fact that our children were being harvested in very horrible practices, and not to mention all the other horrible atrocities that were happening left and right. And somewhere along the way, we said it wasn't important enough to say anything about. That's not my problem, so I'm not going to deal with it. And so we, by default, because we weren't going to step into our own power, by default, our power was taken by the highest bidder, by whoever wanted to steer it in whatever direction. So it always gets to this space whenever we allow our power to be taken by others. It always gets to this space of depravity. It does. And that's why it's so important to find and instill that sense of power within, so that we take that responsibility and say, no, not today, Satan. I'm not going to let that kind of funk come into my life. I'm not going to let it affect my family. I'm not going to let it affect the people around me. And I'm certainly not going to let it affect me. So having that resilience to it is why this has been so uncomfortable to go through, because it had to be this way. And you know, that's one thing that Q recently said in one of the drops this year, was it had to be this way. There was no other option for any other difference. because we were so far stuck into that way of being that it had to be this way. So unfortunately, it is very uncomfortable, and it's not, this is not God punishing us or anything like that. Again, this is all our doing. We created this mess, and so we have to get out of it. And unfortunately, we were so far gone into the mess that we were willing to just walk right into the trap of whatever enemy was going to do anything to us. We were so willing to just hand over our power at the first sign of anyone asking for it, that it would have been very easy for them to take advantage of us and take us into whatever further levels of hell they wanted to take us. So in order to come out of that, and what's been so revealing is this, and that's why I wore this shirt today, because this is Q drop 1440, which is in the which is very significant because this is talking about the 144,000, which is a frequency that we activate when we are in full alignment. So it's a very prevalent Q post and at a very intentional number. But the whole point of it, and of course there are many layers to it, but the big aspect to it is this dark to light concept. So we have to really experience the darkness. You cannot tell people, you must show them. Another thing that Q said, it wasn't something that anyone who had good intentions could come out and just say, hey everybody, you were in hell, you're in hell, and all these people were trying to kill you, and they were poisoning all your food, and they were poisoning all your kids, and they were actually taking your kids, and all these, because people have already tried that. There have been many people throughout history who have been like, hey guys, do you not see what's going on? Do you not see what's happening? And every single time we label them as crazy, we push them to the side. And the system was very much designed to keep that from ever getting out, and it was very good at keeping that from ever coming out. But fortunately, with this much evil, because God's always about balance. This creation is always about balance. So for that much evil to exist, to get us to this space to where this level of depravity was being committed, means that there's some pretty nasty people who were involved with making it happen that way. Because naturally, we are not that dark. We don't come out into this space with that much darkness. It's a very learned trait. It's an accumulation of trauma that gets to that point. It's often generationally handed down. And these families, these 13 bloodline families that were within the cabal, they pass trauma down generation after generation after generation after generation in order to amplify this evil as much as they possibly can, because then that keeps these souls who are inclined to that level of evil, it keeps them reincarnating into these families. So these families have gotten really, really nasty. They have gotten really, really nasty. And another thing Q said, these people are sick. Like, if people knew, another thing they said is, like, if people knew the depth of what these people were doing, most people would go to the hospital. Most people wouldn't even be able to handle the kind of information that these people have done. So we weren't willing to look at it, and they were operating in the darkness to keep it that way. But fortunately, because there's that much evil existed and God is always in balance, there had to have been that much good as well. And it always balances out that way. So even though it wasn't as visible, there were definitely that just as much good people working behind the scenes to try and get the truth out there. And that's what we're continually learning more and more, is this concept of truth in plain sight that the truth community likes to talk about. It wasn't actually truth in plain sight of the bad guys putting it out there. It was truth in plain sight of the good guys trying desperately to get this message out so that we would see it, so that we would see what was happening. We would see all these things that were going on. So all these movies that are giving signs and clues were good guys trying to get this message out there. But I'm sure at times it felt like a complete losing battle. It felt hopeless a lot of times. It's a very risky game to play. When you declare yourself righteously, then you automatically have a target on your back. You automatically are going to be the enemy of this group that had the whole world in its grips. So this had to be a very strategic move to reestablish rightful rulership, which is really us. We are the rightful rulers. The people are. But in order to reestablish that, in order to get us back to this space, there had to be quite a bit done behind the scenes to address that, because the mechanisms that were in place to keep us from realizing what was going on were so deeply ingrained into who we are. And we fought to keep them. We fought to preserve them desperately. I mean, people still to this day, they fight to preserve their tools of enslavement tooth and nail. They won't hear it otherwise, to try and, so the system had us. They had us very deeply. And so there had to been um there was a lot of diligence at play to get to this space of realization. But going back to your question about, why it's so uncomfortable for families, and why this is so challenging, is simply that, is we were so far into this system, we were so far stuck into, and it's like Stockholm syndrome, right, it's like if you fall in love with your prison guard, that's the Stockholm syndrome. The prisoner falls in love with the prison guard. We had done that. We had developed an unhealthy relationship with our abuser. We were the abused, and we developed an unhealthy relationship with our abuser. And we were unwilling to look at any contrary evidence, any contrary things out there. And you just see it within the virus, all that kind of stuff. Like when that started to come out, it didn't matter what kind of information you put in front of people. It didn't matter what data you showed them. It didn't matter what, but for some of us, it made sense right away. And so that's kind of by design, is what that was supposed to prompt to do, was to help inspire others to do the right thing, to have something so blatantly, obviously wrong, that at least a small amount of the population would wake up and be like, what, this isn't right. And it worked perfectly. So that this was kind of initially part of the Black Hats, the bad guys' plan to have this COVID rollout and have this world domination, where they were going to continue to instill technocratic regulations and get us into this space to where we had no rights whatsoever. And then they were going to continue culling the herd by reducing the population through various means and injections and all that. That was very much their plan, what they wanted to do. And unfortunately, we had to experience some aspects of it in order to truly know what that plan was. Like you said, you can't tell the people, you must show them. So the white hats, recognizing that this plan was in full force, they allowed it to go in some extent. I know that they neutralized it as much as they could in certain areas where the harm was going to be the most. I know that they've done as best as they could within that, but free will has to be preserved, so they can't come in too much and affect too much at any time, because we have to be the ones to say no more. We have to be the ones to rise up and say, this is not okay. I don't want my kids being injected. I don't want my kids being taught about, trans whatever. Like, that's not okay. I'm not okay with it. But until we get to this, and that's why it's kind of region specific as well. It really does depend on where you are. Some regions have a lot more to learn. Some regions have a lot more stubbornness in addressing these kind of situations. So it had to be this way. We had to go through this experience in order to come out of it, because it's not about just a quick fix. It's not about just a one time, oh, the saviors of humanity have come in and they've cleaned up all the bad guys. Here they are. We're showing them to you, and everyone's arrested. They're done away with, and that's it. It's not just about that quick fix, because if it was just about the quick fix, it would have been done back in 2016 when the military actually took control, and they would have just come out right away and addressed what needed to be done, because our country had been taken over. They had all the legal precedents to do what they did. They had all the legal means to step up and do what needed to be done, and they did, but they just didn't disclose it to the public, because it's not about just a 4-year election. It's not about just a one-time fix. It's not about just a quick little thing. It's about freeing us forever. It's about eradicating evil off the face of this earth forever. So the only way that we could do that is if we really learned it. So that if each and every one of us said, I'm going to do my part in making sure that evil spreads nowhere. It does not even leave this body. I need to be checking myself and making sure that I'm acting in alignment, and checking everyone around me, and not allowing this kind of filth to just proliferate, not looking for anyone else to give my power to and make sure that they're doing it for me. No, but if they did do the quick fix and address it for us, we would just fall right back into the trick years down the road. And that's what the cabal was really hoping for. That's what, many aspects of them know that they've lost this battle, but they don't think they've lost the war. They think that they still have a chance. They think that they can come back, because this programming that's so deep within us, it's still so deeply within us, and it can be exploited. So the only way to address that programming is if we all experience it to the point where we're just saying, I'm done with it. I give up. I surrender. I don't want to play this game anymore. I don't want to pay attention to the news anymore. I don't want to pay attention to the doctors. I don't trust them. That's where we all need to get to, is this hands in the air, like, then that's what helps us move into this next phase, which is you first have to address the darkness before you come into the light. And most people don't want to address the darkness. They just want to ignore it. They want to push it aside. They don't want to talk about it. They don't want to look at it. And so that means that we have to keep going through this kind of stuff in order to get every single one of those people. And eventually we'll reach critical mass. So it'll be a lot easier. But we have to get to the space where the vast majority of people are so resilient, so sovereign on their own, so willing to step up and do the right thing, no matter what, ridicule they get, no matter what kind of, it doesn't matter. I just need to do the right thing because it's the right thing to do. Like the movie, The Network, I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore. That's what we all need to be getting to, that space, is I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore. Shout it out from the window, shout it wherever you need to. I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore. That's what this awakening is really about. That's getting us to that space to where we're shedding all of this unhealthy power release that we're giving out there, where we're cutting off these lines that are attached to us, that we've woven, these parasitical lines that we've attached ourselves to this system. We're cutting each of those cords, and each one has to do it in their own way. And so that's why it had to be this way. And it does divide families. But even if you look at it from a biblical perspective, this was written about, this was prophesied, this has been talked about. The Bible talks about, and you can, and not just the Bible, but you can look through other ancient texts about this very prophetic time, this revelation, this dawning of a new age. We're shifting out of the Iron Age into the Golden Age, and this is cyclically, this always happens this way, but this is the grandest it's ever been. And because of that, it was inevitable that there was going to be a choice. And this choice is kind of do you want to continue falling into hell, or do you want to rise out of it? And we're all presented this choice continuously, and we can all re-examine that choice whenever we want to. But eventually it's going to get to the point where it's like, okay, you've made your choice. And if you're not coming along with this whole new experience, because we're all raising, and we can't, where we go one, we go all, we can't not all do it together. So we all have to do it together. And so it had to be this way. We had to experience this level of discomfort so that I found my inner power and my connection, and that's it.
Oh, definitely. I see it sort of on a quantum energetic field, whereas, you've got the lower frequency, which is the matrix and the system, which is based on control. And we can call that hell if we like, because the power is outside of us. And when we step into our self-empowerment, our frequency raises, and we actually outvibe the matrix. And then we're coming onto this realm of, heaven, higher realms, where there is freedom and love. But we have to do the energy work ourselves, and it literally is quantum energetics. No one can do it for us. No one else can save us but us, by doing the actual energy work through emotion. So when we're feeling fear, that's very low vibrational, and it keeps us low in a hell that we create. But when we step into our healing journey and our awakening journey, and we come into the frequencies of love and freedom and gratitude, we create then a world that reflects that love and freedom. And that's actually how I see that we escape the matrix.
100%. It's this recognition that the matrix was useful in order to inspire us to leave the matrix. So just like this separation game that we play, it's there to have this whole experience so that we could remember how amazing it is to be harmonious. We experience the discord so that when we come back into harmony, it's that much better. And so it's this constant tug and pull, back and forth kind of game that we play. But we do, when we own that whole process, then we don't have to go to this level of depravity again. We don't need to experience it to this level anymore, because we can own the whole process and recognize that it is part of this process. And it's like, going in it from a biblical perspective, it is the death and resurrection. And this is this process that we all go through, where we realize that we had created an illusory false sense of self and identity based on the matrix. That identity has to die. And not that I'm have to die physically, it's not my body that has to die, but my identity that was tied to that matrix, it does have to die, so that I can be reborn, resurrected in the truth, in alignment with my highest good. But it's still knowing that the matrix, that aspect, was there for a purpose. It was there to have me learn and experience. So I chose, so I can choose not to do that anymore. And it's all there for a higher reason. But hopefully we take it seriously so that we don't have to go through this kind of stuff again.
Yeah, and as your shirt says, dark to light. It's only through knowing the darkness we can appreciate the light, because we've got this, we know how heavy and dense and dark and uncomfortable that darkness felt when we have it in our life, that we really appreciate the light, and we want to stay there as we work our way up. Justin, as people are going through this, and I know I personally went through this, and I think we all do, we've got this new awareness, this new truth, and we want to get the information out there. We want to save people, especially those close, near, and dear to our hearts. So, we've got the situation of spouses, brothers and sisters, families that are, on opposite sides of what, holding both onto their truth. How can those who are awake to this, to the light, to the new truth, navigate dealing with family members who are still so not wanting to maybe hear what they have to say, or in any way change or see that they are creating their suffering?
Yeah, great question. And it's one that's always good to discuss, because this is we learn through our relationships. We learn through, oftentimes, I mean, it's so important to navigate relationships in a way that's beneficial for all, and we do by default, but we can choose to kind of navigate that space in a little bit with less friction and more growth. But knowing that the friction is there to inspire that growth sometimes. And we also have to remember that that free will is absolutely paramount 100% of the time. So this is really, really important, because even if, so let's take a hot topic issue, these experimental injections, and I'm in a relationship with somebody and they want to go get this. Now, this is not something that I would ever recommend anybody doing, and this is not something that I would want done to anybody. And I know that you're just inviting a harmful reaction to some degree, even if it's just you giving away your power. That's still such a reduction in who we are when we give away our power to something like that. So I know the depths of what harm can come from that, even if it is just a saline solution, even if there's nothing in it. It's just that the act of doing so is very, very harmful. But if I was with somebody who wanted to do that, there's nothing that I can do about them choosing to do that ultimately. And I need to be content with that. I need to be okay with that. Or I don't have to be, but if I'm not, it's only going to bring discomfort for myself. Because I need to recognize that people are choosing this experience however they see fit and however they want to. And every experience that's chosen is there for their highest good. So if they're not ready to hear the information about that injection being whatever, and they go through and they have an adverse reaction to that, well, maybe that was exactly the stimulus they needed, that sort of inspiration to not make those decisions of giving away your power. But if I'm sitting here as trying to force someone to hear that, well, I'm taking away from their spiritual journey. I'm taking away from that part of the process of what they needed to do to actually learn that. And as we all know, when we try and tell somebody something that they're not ready to hear, it is always met with resistance, and it always gets us in trouble. And because when we're doing that, if I'm trying to force someone to hear me, I'm bypassing that free will, or I'm attempting to force someone to hear something that they don't want to. And regardless of how good my intentions are with sharing that kind of information with whomever, if they energetically give me a no, then I need to accept that. And if I don't, then I'm going to accrue those negative karmic repercussions that I was talking about, these bounds to preserve this experience, to preserve that free will. There has to be some correction of sorts. So this comes again biblically. It's a great allegory with this: don't cast your pearls before swine. And it's not to be mean. It's not to be mean or call anybody pigs or anything like that. It's just a recognition that so um, if I'm throwing my pearls of wisdom to someone who's not ready to hear them, they're just going to trample them underfoot. I might as well just be throwing away all that I am. And I'm also creating some more discord where it doesn't need to be. So don't bother wasting time doing that kind of stuff. We need to be meeting people where they are, always. Always meet people where they are. Don't force anyone to go anywhere. So with every relationship, no matter how big or how small, always be gauging the spaces where somebody wants to be. Where within this level of information, where do they want to exist in this moment, right here, right now? Not that that can't change. That can always change, and we can always embrace that change and that growth and people wanting to receive more information. Of course, when that happens, we welcome them with open arms. If they start asking questions and they want to know more, we welcome them with open arms. But until that point, I stay exactly where energetically they want to be, where they want to stay at. And that's the space where I meet them. And I meet them with that same with unconditional love, without condition. So if I have conditions on my love, that I'm only going to love them if they listen to me about these things, well, that's not really love. That's love with conditions, with this, which is not really love. So I need to love them unconditionally. Now, this might get you to a situation where there's so much discord in a family or in a relationship that the right and still acting in that unconditional love, still the right decision might be separation. It might be moving away. It might be having some form of agreement where it's like, hey, like, we tried to work this out, but these are just some really non-negotiable areas in my life that I need to have alignment with people who I want to be in my life. And I can't really budge on that. And you're not budging here, and I'm not going to make you budge. I'm not going to force you to go anywhere. You're not going to force me to go anywhere. So if that's not growing together, then it does need to be a separation. And as long as we approach it amicably and respectfully and kindly, and from that perspective. Now, I'm not saying that that might be responded to well in every moment, but that's ultimately where God might be leading somebody, is this recognition that relationship is no longer serving you. That relationship is not helping you to elevate to your highest potential. And sometimes the best thing that we can do for somebody who's not wanting to hear what we have to say is to walk away. Sometimes that's the absolute best message we can give to them. It's like, wow, that person, they were willing to walk away from all this just because of this issue that I didn't really want to listen to. That's a powerful note for them to have that seed to really reconsider whatever it was in that moment. Um, but just like the I believe it's the Declaration of Independence in the U.S., where it talks about how in if there's enough if there's enough reason to abolish the government, the people have a right and duty to do so. This, but it also warns not to do so unless there's the utmost reason to do so. So because it introduces a lot of calamity and chaos. It's not something that we should just be frivolous about. So we should move in our relationships in the same perspective of, I need to exhaust every available means to me to make sure I'm showing up in this relationship in the way that's authentic to me, without sacrificing any of what I know to be true and where my hard stands are. And if that other individual can work with that and can align with that, and we can be together, then that's wonderful, because oftentimes it's through those challenging relationships where we learn the most about connecting with everybody. It's the people that challenge us the most that really teach us quite a lot. They're our best teachers. But it can also mean that you get to the space where it's like, this is a deal breaker. Like there's a space where we can't meet here, and there's no congruency, there's no alignment. So we do need to separate. So it's a case by case basis. That I always had when people ask like what I should do here, and that because people do ask me like what I should do in this scenario or here and there, and I don't often give very specific advice in that regard unless I have more time to spend with them and really go over what's going on, how long it's been there, which I'm happy to do. But generally, I like to just stay in this self-empowerment of like, you need to be checking in with your highest self. You need to be checking in with God and seeing where he's leading you. Where are you being guided in this moment? Is it, are you wanting to leave this relationship because you're afraid and you're just wanting to run away? That's not a good approach. A fear-based decisions are never for our highest good. But am I wanting to move away from this relationship because I feel stifled and I can't even be my authentic self? Well, that's a good reason to need to get out of a relationship when it's stifling our essence. So to really check in with the reasons why we might want to do something, is this fear based or is this love based? And you can start putting things in these two different buckets, and you start to really figure out, okay, where am I being led in this moment? Is this my ego trying to keep me in this fear state? These conditions, these programs, are these running right now? Or am I letting God in, and am I being shown my highest good? But we only get to that space when we surrender to that and stop thinking so much, stop trying to work it out all the time. Sometimes we need to sit with things and really be still with them, and the answer will come. So that's a sort of general advice that I give to people, is if you're frustrated with anything, whether it's relationships, it doesn't matter, but with anything, just take some deep breaths, go outside, spend some time alone, and be still, and just keep breathing. Just keep breathing. I promise you the answer will come to some extent or another. It might not be the answer that you want, but it's always the answer for your highest good. It's always the answer to get you to that space. And sometimes getting to that space of abundance means, well, it always means we have to do some work to get there. We always have to go through some form of letting go. And because we've all grown so attached to this idea and what society should be like, and we've built relationships based on how society told us to build these relationships. We've built families, we've had kids for, and I'm not saying any of this to shirk responsibility. I want to make that very clear as well, as if we have kids that are in our care, do not shirk responsibility in that regard. We need to make sure that everyone who needs care is cared for. But there's always ways to navigate that space with more authenticity and with less of the feeling like we're stifled. We shouldn't feel stifled wherever we are. And yeah, there's a lot of nuances to get into with that kind of stuff, but it's a really good question, and it's something that we can continue to revisit. I used to do a series on awakening and relationships, and we had a bunch of people come on and share their experience and how they've navigated their relationship. And I do want to start doing those again. Colleen's even mentioned potentially doing those as well. So I'm hoping to kind of maybe talk about that as well, and because I love getting input. I'm not in a romantic relationship myself, and so I don't have a lot of like practical advice, because but it's good to hear from others who are experiencing that, and hearing what works for them and what doesn't, and that kind of thing too. So it's a great question, and one we should keep revisiting. So thanks for that.
Well, there's another aspect that we haven't brought up yet that is so important, I think, to grasp, because I think this is always a big wow moment. So let's go back to a spouse, or brother and sister or whatever, and we know what we believe to be our truth, and we believe that by them, for example, not getting the shot, when we're pleading our case, we believe we're doing it out of love. So then we've got this 5D concept. Well, love is is the heal all and everything. So why isn't their love working?
Well, again, we have to really examine this tricky little fear-based program that we have within us, and know that's why they call Satan the deceiver, because it loves to hijack our sense of goodness and use it against us. It loves to hijack this desire to see the highest good in everyone, and then use it for its own selfish reasons, our own selfish reasons. And ultimately, if I'm just putting that very, very bluntly, that's trying to control another. Even if my intentions are of the highest good, I'm trying to control, I'm trying to steer And that's always the tool of the left brain. That's always the tool of the ego, which the cabal is ultimately the manifestation of that ego, and their whole system is based on control. So if I'm trying to bypass the free will of another and control them, then I'm no better. I'm no better, even though I think that I might be in that moment. If I'm not respecting of the free will of another, then I'm no better. And that can only happen if I've convinced myself that I am separate from that individual that I'm having a relationship with. So if I've convinced myself that that is a completely separate individual, there's no connection between us, there's no connection to all that's going on, that's the only time where I can be somehow dissatisfied, discontent with where they are, instead of recognizing that that is just another aspect of me experiencing in the ways that they need to, perfectly designed for them in those moments, knowing that I play a part in their experience, but I'm not going to dictate their experience. I'm not going to make them, force them to choose anything. They need to experience it in the way that they need to, just like I needed to experience all that I did in the ways that I needed to. We can all remember times where somebody was trying to tell us something and we didn't want to hear it. This happens. And so we need to honor that process and say, okay, well, you don't want to go there. That's fine. Whenever you do, we can go there. But until then, you just keep figuring out the ways that you see best. And we plant the seeds. And not that we should ever silence our voice, but just remember when our voice is infringing upon another's space. So if my voice is in a space like this is a show where I was invited on. This is very much an invited space. Everything that we share here, everything that we talk about here is completely invited. But if I'm going to somebody who's not wanting to talk about this kind of stuff, and I'm sitting near them or I'm following them around, continually telling them all these things, is like, why aren't you listening to me? Well, that's not inviting. I'm not invited at all. So that's a helpful tool with every aspect, is we always need to be waiting for that invitation before I share. I need to make sure that invitation is firmly in place before I start to broach that subject. And this doesn't have to be a verbal, robotic, like, hey, am I invited to share this? Can I, and you can. And it's really helpful actually to ask people like, hey, is it okay if I share this? Like, that's a wonderful way to start a conversation. It opens up the door, and it gives them the option to say no. But it is just an energetic invitation. It doesn't have to be verbal. It doesn't have to be defined. But we can all tell very quickly when somebody's not wanting to listen to what we have to say. We all know very easily. And then I have to recognize, am I wanting to tell this person this thing because I want because I'm for their highest good, or am I just trying to prove that I'm right? And that's a really important distinguishment, because if you want to tell them for their highest good, then you'll trust the process. You'll trust the process that they're going through. You'll trust that they'll come to you when the time is right. You'll trust that you can plant the seeds in the ways that you can without infringing upon that free will, letting them be as they are. But if I'm trying to prove them right, then I'm coming at it from an egotistical, selfish perspective, where I'm just prideful and wanting to make them hear what I have to say. I want to make them know that I'm right and they're wrong. So another way to kind of distinguish, where is this energy coming from? Where is this drive coming from to tell them what I want to tell them? Is it because I truly love them without conditions and I want their highest good, or is it I'm selfishly trying to steer them into my worldview or the way that I want it to be, because I have some expectation on how they should be that's not met? And that's my responsibility to have expectations. Don't have those. We are all free of expectations, free of conditions. And when we can live that way and also support that way, then everything starts to build based on that, off of freedom instead of control. And that's really all it comes down to.
Yeah, and I think another point to consider is, are we trying to change their opinion so we can feel better about, because we're thinking ahead, well, what if they die? What if they paralyze? What if?
Yes.
So if they will just do as I say, I can relax and feel better. And of course, at that point, we've got to question ourselves. Well, okay, they've got free will to make their decision, and ultimately their higher self, God, whatever, is doing, whatever is right for their journey, that they do have a higher level agreement with. So now how can I find my peace knowing that that's in God's hands? And, now It's not about me changing them to feel better. Now it's back to my journey. What do I have to do to find peace out of this situation? So always bringing it back to self.
Exactly. Well said. And just coming back to that personal responsibility of know how anyone else is doing is really not my responsibility. I really need to own my space, and I really need to be checking my space. But it's not really my responsibility how anybody operates, or how everybody is. That's their journey, their space. Now, it doesn't mean that I excuse any sort of behavior that needs to be corrected. If there's people that are being harmed, if anything is being harmed, then I need to do the appropriate action to stop that harm. And that this is just acting in accordance with the karmic laws. If we don't enforce the karmic laws and allow harm to just be harm to occur, then we're inviting a larger karmic repercussion where we all get to experience those karmic repercussions. So as long as we're responsible in that moment, checking in with myself, am I aligned correctly? And if I am, then I have more clarity and I have more authority to say if someone else is stepping outside of those bounds of morality. But until then, I have no room. I have no leg to stand on if I don't even know which way's up or which way's down. So that's why the first step is always, check in the mirror. You have to start with yourself before you can even begin to have the conversation with anybody else.
Yeah. Okay. So people have come into that awareness. So they're like, but wow, I feel so frustrated. What can I do? I'm not on, for example, I'm not on podcasts. I'm not Justin. I'm not Gemma. I'm like, what can I do? If I go and talk about it on Facebook or whatever, they'll censor me. What can people do?
Yeah, well, it's really different for everybody, but it's really being honest with yourself is the starting point. Like really be honest with yourself and self-examine. So as I mentioned, look in the mirror. And I don't mean just physically, but like look in the mirror and look at every aspect of your life. Look at every aspect of your life and how you got there. Is this something that is elevating me? Is this an area of my life where I feel like I'm inspired to do more? Or is this some weight? Is this some baggage that's holding me back? Is this something that's keeping me from reaching my maximum potential? So that's different for everybody, whatever category it is for you. But that's where we should really look. And you can't really even know which areas to look at until you're fully honest with yourself and willing to self-examine. That's why the sort of myth that vampires can't look in the mirror, well, that's because anyone who's stuck in their left brain eventually turns into a vampire and they cannot self examine. Nobody who's in their left brain who's so selfish, so self centered, they cannot look at themselves at all. They have no desire to look at anything. They have no desire to take any responsibility for anything that they do. And we've been conditioned by those same people to be just like them. So we've been conditioned by Satanists to be Satanists, to be so self serving that we're unwilling to even look at where are the areas in my life that I can do better. I'm always wanting to blame somebody else. And we talked about this in another show about the victim mindset. This is this victim mentality that I'm always bound to everything else that happens to me. It's all happening to me and I can't do anything about it. Well, then you'll stay stuck there. So that's a beautiful area to address if you still feel like you don't have enough to do or you don't have something to go off of. There's always something to address. There's always something powerful to address. And people might ask, well, but yeah, I can focus on me, but what about all these other things going on outside of me? How can I help them or what can I do about that? And it's like, just you have to trust the process and trust that by you cleaning up yourself, by you addressing the things that you need to do, you are going to be led to those spaces where you can help more people. I promise. I promise that's how this creation works. That's what we've been taught wrong about. We're not taught that this is an altruistic, benevolent creation, and it rewards serving, it rewards service, it rewards this sense to help. But we can't even begin to help anybody else. You always put your own oxygen mask on first. Like you can't even begin to help anybody else until you address these major issues within yourself. If we're not healthy, if my physical health is in such poor condition where I'm always in pain, I'm always reaching for some medication, I'm always having to go to the doctor, what time are you going to have to help anybody? you know, you can't. And so that's a big area to kind of address. And until that's addressed, then your focus should not be anywhere else. And same thing with spiritual health. If you don't feel like you're connected with everything that is, go outside, go spend a lot of time outside in nature and find that connection. And it might take some time, it might take some work to really cultivate that connection, because we've been conditioned so far by those who like to disconnect us. It might take time, but I promise you that there are ways that you can sink further into that through breathing and all meditation, all these different ways of just being okay with yourself and knowing that you are here having this experience, and it's all okay. So that's another space to work on. And then there's the mental aspect as well. You know, where are these sort of mental blockages that we can do? Where are these mind games that we play with ourselves to keep us in this limited state of being? We are the only ones that keep us limited. Nothing else does, truly. I mean, there's yes, there's like a trending creation of society that does keep us limited in some degree or another. It's a byproduct of, but that's ultimately a byproduct of us limiting ourselves. So we would never have gotten to this space where society limits us if we didn't limit ourselves inherently by default. And that's created by lots of lies. You know, the church loves to push the lie that we're just a worthless sinner and we can amount to nothing. And you know, they love that one. They love to keep us small in that perspective. But if we believe it, then we're accepting it and we're going with it. So this is all coming from the space of self-empowerment of like, no, I'm not small. I don't have to limit myself. I don't have, you know, so it looks different for everybody. With that, I shared a good note with somebody today who shared something about and she was just talking about lots of different things. And within her message, she kept saying like, I don't have very good memory. I have a really hard time seeing things, like stuff like that. And so I told her, I was like, hey, do you realize how many times in that statement you just cast a dark spell against yourself? How many times you were self-deprecating? You cast in. So this is really realizing just how powerful we are and just how much influence just those little things have on our very existence, you know, how we perceive everything. So if you can examine the words that we use, and if it's coming out that negatively on in a written text, I can't even imagine what that person says to themselves in their inner dialogue. You know, what the conversations are like going on within them, within their head. So that's a huge area to look at. You know, if we're having these kind of inner dialogues where I'm always beating myself up for whatever, you know, I'm always shaming myself, or whatever the case may be, then we're going to stay in that space until we learn to let go of that, until we learn to get out of that. So anyway, those are just some examples of things to get into. But it's all, you know, it's all shadow work. It's all just addressing whatever the area that's holding us back the most. And so there are definitely methods and practices and things that you can do to really look at these things. There's courses that are beneficial that you can, like I did I participated in a course called Momentum Education, which was all about finding your shadow. You know, finding wherever in your life where you're telling yourself these stories to keep you from activating and stepping into your highest self. And so there were all these. It was a group learning experience where we came together and we went through these different activities, and each activity was designed to look at a different aspect of our life and figure out, were there any traumas or were there any stories that we were telling ourselves to keep us locked into that lower state of being. So this was an incredible tool, you know, and there are others out there. I think there are other companies that do that in the US. I think Landmark's another one that's really good. But there are other very similar courses and programs and things that are designed to just kind of break you down, and not in a bad way, but break you down from all these layers that we built around ourselves to keep us from realizing who we are and really see how we tick and find those things that you can unlock. And man, I tell you, the ability for people to shine after letting go some of those weights. I mean, there's nothing better than to see others, or to experience yourself of just letting go of that, you know, and realizing, wow, I was holding on to that. I didn't even realize how heavy it was. I had no idea how much weight I was carrying until I let it go. So yeah, that's another great great tool to kind of self-examine. And the more we all learn this process of take personal responsibility and be willing to have hard conversations, this will all happen naturally where these kinds of things get addressed. But there are definitely tools out there where, if you have the time and money and you can look into some courses like this, you can definitely accelerate this process quite a bit. Other people will look to things like plant medicine as a way to kind of have that unlocking moment as well. So there are different modalities to kind of achieve a similar effect, but it's all about unlocking the highest you. And so if anyone has any doubts about what to do, it's like, well, I bet I could figure out some things to do real quick just by conversation. So
Oh, definitely. And while people are still looking to change something outside of themselves to feel better, to create their peace, they've still got quite a lot of work to do, because we come to the point where we can only ever change ourselves. And once we do, we've always got our peace bubble. Whatever's happening out there, we can always come back to our self-created peace. So I think that's what people can do to work to find their own sense of peace. So, is your body at peace physically? Is your mind at peace mentally, emotionally? Have you healed your wounds so you're at peace there? So then, is your house at peace, your home, then your family and your community, and you bring it out into the world. There's so many layers, but you can't do it so it stays if you start out there and try to change everything else so that eventually you'll find peace. So it really is an inner journey. And when we find our own peace, as within, so without, it is energetically on a quantum level reflected in our outside world, because that's what we're creating coming from within us. Would you agree, Justin?
absolutely 100%. And that's another trick of organized society, is to keep us always focused on the out there, always focus on everything else except for the only place where it truly matters, which is within. And because as soon as we address this space, my space, then everything else happens by default. Everything else fixes itself, addresses itself. I don't need to worry about that. And that's why, like, God doesn't ask us to save anybody. He doesn't ask us to go about trying to help. He just says, cultivate that within, cultivate that Christ-like energy within, and then you will do all those things by default. He knows we want to help, he knows we want to serve. So, but you got to do it yourself first until you're in a space to where you can really help. Then sometimes we can do more harm than good just by trying to help, until we've actually addressed what we need to. And then trust the process, just trust that you're going through at the right space in the right time. I don't need to be searching high and low to find these things that I need to be doing. If I'm worried about what should I be doing, um, then it means there's some discontent with just my day to day. If I don't have enough in front of me right now, then where is my attention being drawn to? Am I even present in where I am? Am I even focused on where I am right now? And sometimes that's the best space to do the work, is just look around you, look what's going on. And like you said, find that peace within all those spaces. So
It's
well
so
said.
easy to blame everyone else for our discomfort. Um, so there's another subject I want to bring up. As we're awakening and we're seeing all the different layers of truth and lies, and we're trying to navigate our way as to, well, what actually is truth? Because there's so many layers where what we term white hats have infiltrated, black hats have infiltrated. And often, even if we've been years on this sort of delving into truth, we met at times where what we thought was truth is now suddenly confronted again, and we're given two options and two conflicting opinions outside of ourselves. And without getting into any specific details, how do people navigate that? Like,
Well,
yeah, go on.
yeah, I mean, it's the same sort of personal responsibility that we have to take in every regard, and not be putting my faith, or not be putting all of my who I am, my power, onto anybody else. No matter how good we think anybody's intentions are, if I'm giving them my power to say that your word is gospel, then I'm not doing what I need to do. I'm not cultivating that power within. So that's really where it comes to, is like we need to recognize that I'm the one in the driver's seat. And while I should listen to people that I respect and hear out what they have to say and weigh in everything respectively, I don't need to be tied to anything. And this gets us in trouble when we start to have these attachments, when we start to get tied to an outcome, an experience, any sort of way. Um, we have these expectations that it has to go this way. I've made up my mind. I've got it this way. And then as soon as I'm introduced some contradictory evidence or information otherwise, I get really upset. And then instead of actually examining this contradictory evidence, I just dig in further into where I was because I don't want to look at that. I don't want to be uncomfortable. I don't want to have to admit that I was wrong. Pride is always the reason why we don't do that. So it's all about just having that humility to say, you know, I've learned some things and I'm not going to discard what I've learned, but I'm also not going to be afraid when I'm confronted with new information. I'm not going to be unwilling to examine any new information. If we're unwilling to examine new information, that means we're attached to one idea and we're not really in it for the truth. We're not really there for the truth and nothing but the truth, because our interpretation of the truth is flawed inherently. We have a limited perspective, and so we can't grasp the full scope of all that's going on. The truth is rock solid. It doesn't change. It is all that is and all that has ever been. I have my limited perception of that, and that changes, but the truth never changes. So it's always knowing that my perception might be off. And so if knowing that that truth never changes, my perception can, because if I'm introduced new information that conflicts with where I was, then I need to be willing to re-examine, how did I get to this space of understanding? How did I get to this level of awareness? Did I build my foundation correctly, or do I need to start all over? And that's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing to be constantly re-examining, because what it does is it ends up refining what you know, making that even stronger. Because if you're always willing to re-examine what you know based on new information, then you're constantly testing what you know. You're constantly testing it with these new questions and these new ideas, and it should hold. If it's the truth, it will not move. It will not budge. I promise. It's so rock solid that if you're on the truth, if your perception is close to that truth or on it, right on it, it will not change. And so no matter what sort of questions, no matter what sort of information is put in front of you, you will still have that rock solid idea. But if this new information comes along and my idea on what I thought I knew is, if that's really shaky, and all of a sudden this new thing comes along and that starts to make the whole thing tremble, well, it's not a really good foundation and you're not really that sure of it. So we should be willing to ask these kind of questions. So the truth fears no investigation ever. The truth never ever. So anyone who's firm in this process of finding the truth, truly seeking the truth, never fears any question. But anyone who is stuck and attached to an idea, they hate questions, because the questions are what's inviting them to let go of those ideas and to re-examine something that might be different. And so this is a great practice. It's just like, why am I resisting this piece of information? Is it because I'm attached to an outcome, or or what? Where's the resistance coming from? Because if I'm sure about what I know, if I've got rock solid, if I've got a rock solid understanding about what I'm talking about, then I shouldn't fear hearing something that's contrary, because I know what I know. So I'm not going to get upset if somebody tells me something different. It's like, well, you can believe that, but I know what I know, so I'm good. But I'm still going to consider what you're saying. I'm not going to fear it. I'm not going to run away from it. But if we find ourselves getting upset or running away, or whatever the case may be, because of new information, well, that's just indicating that what we knew wasn't very strong at all. And if we get so emotional by somebody presenting some new information, then we definitely need to re-examine everything, because emotion is there's no need for emotion within truth. Truth just is. It doesn't give a fuck about your feelings. It doesn't care what you think. The truth is just is. And then we have our perception of that. We're trying to navigate this space so that we gain a better understanding of this immovable aspect that is the truth.
Yeah. And I think it's all challenges and tests for us to fine tune our own self empowerment. Because as we're on this journey, we might listen to you, we might listen to a whole range of other people that, you know, we align with their delivery of truth. But we can pick and choose. I can take what resonates that I hear you speak. I can take what resonates with, you know, other people. I don't have to take it all, and I can make my own truth. I don't have to give my power to anyone else and their version of truth. It's all about picking and choosing our own, and forming what's my truth, and standing strong in that, and fine tuning that, you know, and being able to being emotionally mature enough to say, okay, well, I disagree what you said, but I do like the other parts that you said. And just because you said one thing that I disagree with doesn't dissolve everything else that you've ever spoken of. So it's really fine tuning this and our attachment to other truthers or other people publicly speaking truth.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, just to again do another kind of biblical reference. I mean, this is idolatry. This is why the practice of idolatry is not good to do, because what idolatry is really just putting anything or anyone in between you and God, in between you and source. So anytime that I'm putting that much weight on somebody else to be unwilling to examine anything else, and I'm so stuck on that one limited idea, well, then my reality is going to be based on those limitations. My reality is not going to be flowing to the truth, no matter where it lies, if I'm still stuck on that thing. So that's why idolatry is a really, really good to be aware of. Is like, where am I giving my power to? Am I holding my power? Am I transmuting my power? Am I using it for that highest good? Or am I giving it away readily to someone else to say that they know more than I do, or they have my perception figured out better than I can. So I'm not going to do any work or take any ownership of it. And then as soon as they say something that, angers me or whatever else, then, we get upset at whoever we created the idol of, it's
Yeah,
this unhealthy relationship that constantly is, and the solution is just don't give away your power. Don't give away your power to anybody. This is about cultivating your own power, and then we can add our collective power together so we can share it without hierarchy. No hierarchy. God is not about hierarchy. Hierarchy is about this control slave system, but there's no hierarchy within. It's equal opportunity for all, and it should always be that way.
yeah. And I find personally too, because I'm not a lot in the analytical part of my mind. Sometimes I'm happy with just not knowing the answer. I'm like, okay, I can listen to this person, and this person has got a different truth. I'm okay. My peace is actually not needing to know the answer at this point, and just, just because I don't think any one human on earth can know everything. There's so
No.
many levels to truth. It's just like, what, as we said, once we think we've got one subject all boxed up, something will come to break that box open. So it's just being open and aware, and always coming back to our own peace,
Yep.
I find.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and then just to reiterate that this is this death and resurrection, this death and rebirth is your it's not just a one-time thing. This is a constantly being willing to die to what I knew, and so that I can be reborn to what I'm now learning. It's not that I discard what I've learned. It's not that I just immediately throw it out, but I'm not attached to it. I'm not unwilling to look at any new piece of information that might contradict what I've established. So this is this process of the constant phoenix dying and rising from the ashes. This is what we're supposed to be doing in each and every moment, is letting go of attachment, letting go of that expectation, so that I have this full freedom to flow wherever I'm called to, wherever I'm asked to walk, and without being tied to anything else than that.
Oh, yeah, love it. Justin, what haven't we touched on yet that you think is important to bring into this conversation? And then I did make a few notes that I'll check that if there's anything we haven't covered yet.
Yeah, what else have we not covered? I think just just a reminder to everybody that this time period that we're going through is designed ultimately designed by us. This whole experience is designed by us, but to test us. This experience is designed to test us. So it is likely going to get worse before it gets better, at least on the worldview kind of stage and what's happening and what we're going through. We're going to be continually tested to divide, and not in ways of right versus left or anything that we've been conditioned to divide, but this is truly the only divide, which is who's going into the depths, who wants to stay in hell and who wants to rise. And so there's going to be this continual choice given to us. um, Now, it's important that we remember that even though things might seem scary as we're going through them, we are being tested in the sense that it's all about strengthening, finding that inner power, not giving away your power to anybody else. So if we find ourselves being afraid by what's going on or what's happening, then we're looking outside of ourselves once again for the answers that we've had all along. Everything about this test that we're going through is to get you back to your seat of power, to get you back to your throne so that you can act as the sovereign, as the S over reign of your domain, so that you're the one who is in charge of your own space. Um, until then, we have to go through lots of these kind of experiences so that we come to this realization, so that and it so all that to say, I just want to remind everybody that it's going to be intense. It's going to continue being intense. It's already been intense, but it has to be this way. It had to be this way, and but it's for the utmost good. It's about unlocking all of who we are. So just don't lose sight on that. Don't lose sight on that faith and that knowing. Get good with your foundation. Get good with your connection with God, source, however you want to term it. Just get good with your connection. Get good with your connection to all. And then no matter what happens in the out there, it doesn't matter. No matter if the strongest storm sweeps through, you cannot be you cannot be knocked off your seat of power, because you found that strength was in. Even if you have no idea what's going on, even if you have no idea the details about what's happening around you, it doesn't matter. Ultimately, that doesn't matter. The details don't really matter. It's about you having that connection. So any which way that you can strengthen that connection is going to do wonders as we prepare for this continued awakening process, which has been intense, is intense, and is going to continue being intense because it has to be. So that's all I would like to say.
That's beautiful. I see. I did have about which pain and suffering, which I think is important to touch on, even though we've done it sporadically. It's something that we've all experienced. But would you say, as we come into this awakening journey, as we heal our mind, body, spirit, soul, it lessens, and ultimately that is the motivator. So pain and suffering is a reason, a catalyst. Would you like to expand on that?
Yeah, well, pain and suffering are they're merely mechanisms to get us back to a space of balance. So they're not mandatory for this experience. It's not that we have to have them, but because we've navigated so far away from our space of balance, then we needed to kind of have more intense of a catalyst to bring us back to that space of balance. We were so far gone that it does have to be quite severe in order for us to feel it and recognize it and say, I don't want any more of that. So it's not to, again, God is not there to punish us with anything. It's not to make these decisions to force anyone to have to experience pain just for, I don't know, sick pleasure or anything like that. It's truly for our benefit. It's truly to help us realize how far we'd fallen and what we need to do to correct course so that we can get back onto this path of, the straight and narrow. We can get back onto this path of maximum potential, this unlocking of our creative self, our highest self, what we came here to do. We forgot. We really, really forgot. And so we have to, unfortunately, experience quite a bit of pain to come back to that realization. So everything is very intentional, is very purposeful. And I know a lot of people struggle with that concept, especially when you start talking about children, or the larger implications on what's going on right now. And as hard as it is to see, just know that this whole experience, there is no such thing as death. Death isn't this solid thing that we need to fear and is the end all be all. We are eternal. We are absolutely eternal, having this experience. And the only reason we're having this experience as such is because we needed to. We needed to go through this. We chose to go through this. We chose to experience it like this. And unfortunately, because we chose to go through it like this, then the level of recorrection, which that's all pain is just recorrecting, just rebalancing. The amount of rebalancing that has to occur is pretty severe. It's pretty intense. So it's not, it's, that it's a difficult concept to grasp, especially when when one is still in the victim kind of mindset that everything's happening to me. So that would be something that I would suggest, is to really recognize this fundamental principle that there is nothing that's happening to me. It's all happening for me 100% of the time. Never, ever, 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 ever goes away from that, no matter how deep and dark and nasty or whatever is happening around me. It's happening for me in that moment so that I would be inspired to make the necessary change to get out of it. And unfortunately, as sad as it is, sometimes the catalyst for a mother to stop giving her will over to the doctors is to have her child experience some adverse reaction to an injection. And as sad as that is, that's what was necessary to get her out of that. That's what was necessary to get us out of this mindset that we're just so willing and so willing to give away our power, just that, with no thought whatsoever, no consideration whatsoever. So unfortunately, that's going to be a very tough realization for so many to go through, is realizing, oh my God, what have I done? What have I allowed to happen? What has this space, what have we gotten to? And that is going to be very, very painful. And knowing that this is a part of this process, it can help us who do have a little bit more clarity in this moment right now to have that compassion for everyone as they're going through their own specific awakening process, knowing that it's full of pain, depending on how much the person has held on to that old and dying way. So not to excuse any poor behavior when somebody is harmful to anybody, um, but it does help to breed that sense of compassion. And if somebody does react in some way that's unpleasant, we don't have to hold it against them. We don't have to, make them see any sort of way. Just know that when people are reacting to these kinds of things, it's because the pain that they're experiencing within from having to deal with these realizations, it's very severe. And so that's what can allow us to hold these spaces for them. Can't force them to hear me, but as soon as they're ready, they will come. And I won't reject them. I won't tell them I told you so. I won't rub it in their face. If we do that, we accrue more karmic repercussions the other way. So stay in that space of humility, stay in that space of openness, and cultivate that connection and allow that, that healing to occur. We're about to have a lot of really, really wounded, hurt people who have experienced a lot of pain, and there's going to be a lot of care and compassion needed to help us all heal and come from this dark to light. The dark is nasty. It's a nasty space to come from, but it's necessary. And coming into the light, it's uncomfortable, coming from that space. But the more we do, we know what's there. I mean, those of us who've already gotten a taste of it know how beautiful and how unlimited that realization is. It just gets better and better. It doesn't stop. And that's how creation is set up, is once we realize who we are, once we start to play this game properly, all the mechanisms in place are designed to help us. All of them are designed to help inspire us and get us into that space to where we are the best version of ourselves, doing the most good. But until then, we've got to go through some intense rebalancing. So just a reminder to everyone to be compassionate as we go through this.
Yeah, I love how you said that. So we don't have to teach people. Pain teaches people, whether it's physical, mental, emotional. In fact, all those energetic bodies are all linked anyway. What's emotional will play out physically. Justin, let's wrap up by on a positive note, sovereignty, what are you all working towards? What ultimately, where do you see humanity, those who are, you know, doing the awakening, doing the work, are compassionate, loving, working through their pain, you know, wanting the best for themselves and their families, coming from a genuine place? Where do you see us heading, and what's the future looking like?
Well, it's you know, everything based on organized society was flipped upside down. You know, we've been lied to about everything. So everything, all these systems that were created the wrong way. So we have to go flip it around. And instead of a top-down approach of hierarchy where the leaders of the world dictate everything else and everything trickles down, the wealth trickles down, all this kind of stuff, that's what we have to get away from and move back into personal sovereignty as we the people are truly in charge. Not that anyone is more in charge than anybody else, it's all an equal opportunity. But we all have to establish that sovereignty and say, no more, I'm not participating in a system that is not built for my highest good and our highest good. If it doesn't, then I'm not participating. I'm not going to be involved with it. I'm not pouring my sweat equity. I'm not pouring my intention into it. It's not going to be there. Um, so this is the space of responsibility that we all need to get to, so that we can flip society upside down and start running it from the individual and moving to the family and moving to the community, moving to the larger community, the town, the county, the state, the country, the nation, you know, going all the way up from that perspective. So then you have a group, you have a organized set of sovereigns working together for a common goal. And that goal is just the continuation of this beautiful divine process that we have right in front of us. And what I've mentioned of just finding and making and being the best version of yourself. And everybody wants that. Everybody wants that. And as long as my, you know, and it does, my best version is never going to harm another. So as long as there's no harm, then everything it helps each other. Everything helps out everyone do better. So when we have this kind of approach to everything, then you start to have, you know, families that move together, that have this same goal, and they build a community that has that same goal. So they're pouring all their intention, they're organizing, they're learning how to go through conflict resolution and address things that need to be addressed and do all those kind of nuanced things, but they address them at the local level. And then that, as soon as, you know, they keep, hopefully keep their local level balanced and everything is in good order, and then that good order translates to a group of communities that are all together within the same area, and they're all checking in with each other, say, hey, you got everything figured out? Well, here's an idea what we did here, here's how we address this. And everyone's sharing ideas, because the best ideas will always rise to the top, so it'll naturally just get better and better and better in that way. And then you take that structure and you move to a larger example where you've got, let's say, a nation. And so that's all organized in that same sort of way, where it's not, no one has authority to make anybody do anything. Nobody can say it has to be this way and you have to live by these rules just because you're in this land, just because you have this space, you have to be this way. It's like, no, it's all voluntary. It's every bit of it is voluntary. So the only way that sort of government, and it won't even really be called, you know, this should be the governments and all governments, because we don't need our minds governed, you know, and that's the space too. So we move away from this space to where our minds are governed, and doing it to where it's just a central organization of communication, to where everything that the, you know, government, for lack of a better term, provides is of value to everyone who involved with it. So it's not that they're forcing anyone to use their programs or services. It's like, your services should be so good, your roads and everything should be so good. That's what encourages that investment. That's what encourages these local communities to invest in these sort of larger infrastructure projects or whatever else, is because they trust and see that it's going to the right reasons. And so then every single issue is determined and decided independently, without this overarching governing body saying it has to be this way. And then a new people come in and they want to change it all and do it differently. And we'll get away from that system entirely, and it will just be and that'll be done easily through transparency, as long as we ensure that that transparency happens at every single level, to where no amount, as soon as anyone starts to deal with money that has to do with more than themselves, then 100% scrutiny. It's like, okay, your money no longer just affects your world. So you have to be under the microscope, and everyone does. And it's not that, and I say that loosely because it's no one's going to be forced to be transparent, but it's going to be this kind of uh, you're going to seem very strange if you don't. Like you're going to seem real shady if you aren't transparent. So it's just going to be the common social norm for everyone to say, yeah, I have nothing to hide. I want to be fully transparent. Here's where I spend all this money. Here's where I got all this money. And here's what I'm doing with it. And here's how it's going. And so anyone who says, I don't want to share that, it's like, well, red flag. Why don't you want to share? What do you got? What are you hiding over there? And so these people who are unwilling to share and be this sort of transparent beacon of truth, and not fear any investigation. You know, the truth fears no investigation. So if we have nothing to hide, then we should be willing, not that we're constantly under like a surveillance state. You know, we don't want to introduce anything like that, but it's a voluntary transparency. So it's like, okay, you have some investigation, you think there was some discrepancy here. Yeah, absolutely. Here's all my books. Here's everything you need to look through. Here's all the people involved and whatever else. And that's just a common practice that will be very, very, it'll be interesting to work through those at the beginning. It'll take a lot of balancing. It's gonna be an interesting time period as we kind of figure out how to do all this without having mom and dad watch over us, because that's ultimately what we're doing. Is we had everything done for us, and we're moving into sovereignty where we are responsible for literally every aspect. And
Yeah.
that's a lot of responsibility that, you know, people might not want to address, but it is for the greatest good of ensuring that nobody has any authority to do anything to anybody else. And that only comes when we you know, because if there's a crazy person out there that's like, I want to control you and make you do these kinds of things, if none of us ever give in to that, then that's just a crazy person over there talking about whatever, and it's like, okay, crazy person, you get to go be crazy over there and no one's going to listen to you. But it never grows past that point, so then we never create any of these problems as long as we have that sense of personal responsibility, that sovereignty. So yeah, that's kind of my take there.
Yeah, yeah, I love it. I think I would summarize that as in we're shifting from service to self to service to others. And when everyone's in service to others, it's just a beautiful flow of energy. No one's feeling lack or the need to accumulate things. We abundantly share with others. And because we're moving into the frequency of freedom, well, that also means personal freedom. And to get to personal freedom, we are transparent. We've worked through our emotional and our mental state that we understand that freedom is actually transparency, having nothing to hide, you know. So I think all that will balance energetically as we move into that, as the collective moves into that frequency. That will be a natural, that will play out organically, naturally, energetically. So yeah, the future looks very bright, but we've got to take ourselves there personally, individually. No one's coming to save us. We have to do the energetic work ourselves to get us at that frequency.
Absolutely, well said.
Any final words, Justin?
I don't think so. Just another, yeah, I mean, let's see, any final words? Just continue, just echo everything that we said. Really, it's just about finding that power within, realizing if I'm giving away that power to anybody, examining that process. And, you know, just like I mentioned, we have to first by being honest with ourselves. Be honest with other people, but yeah, be really honest with yourself too. And if you have an area of your life that you don't want to look at, well, that's where you need to do the most work, you know. And that's just kind of how this works. When we feel this resistance to looking at something honestly, then that's the lowest hanging fruit. That's the weight that's holding us back the most. So our commitment to that is really there's no limit to us when we start to address all these issues and start to address all these things that are holding us back. There's no limit to how high we can fly.
And the way we can help the most is by being the example, right? Being the example of love and, you know, and light, our own journey, how we've come from the darkness into light, and just living in our peace and creating that, extending out into the world, right?
Absolutely.
Wow, I've loved this conversation. It's always so interesting, this stuff, and there's so many layers to it. And, it's probably something that people might want to watch more than once to really to pick up on all Justin's wisdom and experience. So thank you so much for sharing your time with us today. And
Yeah, yeah, no problem. And if anyone, wants to connect more or see more of my stuff, you're always welcome to find me at justincarpenter.org. That's my site, or my Telegram channel, at Justin Carpenter 33 is the handle for that. But all my links are on my website. So justincarpenter.org, you can find all the links there. I love having these kind of conversations. This is just a regular part of who I am and what I love to engage on. So I'm really grateful that Gemma has invited me into this space to be able to continue sharing on these amazing things, because this is where the work is. This is where we have the most potential for growth, is these areas that are uncomfortable. And so that's where I'll always be, is these areas where, hey, I'll be the really kind, loving approach to these uncomfortable topics, so that we can really address them and move on to greater and new heights. So thank you, Gemma. I really appreciate you having me here.
my pleasure. And Justin, you have often have Q&As on your Telegram chat that people can just, chime in on and ask questions, and they often run for 2 or 3 hours, maybe once or twice a week. Is there a specific time for those, or are those random?
They've been random so far. I will probably get to a more regular cadence here in a couple weeks or so. But my travel schedule has been, kind of all over the place, so I haven't set a specific time on that. I might do one tomorrow. If you're, depending on when you're listening to this, I might do one on my channel tomorrow. And just as Gemma said, they're open for everybody. I love, one thing that I've always kind of had an issue with truthers or anyone within having a following or whatever, is just the lack of availability on being able to connect with those. And I get that some people get busy or whatever else, but I want to make sure that my time is spent to facilitate those connections and be available as best as I can. Of course, I respect my own time, and it's not 24/7, but when I do open up those spaces, I do invite anyone to share anything, no matter if it's a completely contradictory perspective and it's a question, you think is like a curveball or whatever else. I still invite those experiences, because if somebody has the question, then it needs to be answered. And so I love just inviting and seeing what questions come up and who's got to bring anything, and just really creating a space where people can talk on those kind of things openly. Because it is, that's where we learn so much and so quickly, is just by having these kind of conversations without judgment, without anyone saying, you can't talk about this, or we can't go there, we can't do this. And my only thing, as long as respect is maintained, we can talk about anything. So that's my only requirement, is there has to be respect, just general respect. We can agree to disagree, but having that space is really quite something. So yeah, feel free to join us, anytime you like. It's always a lot of fun.
Yeah, and especially on Telegram, there is less censorship. And what I also love is that you record them all. And so, even if they're on like 2 a.m. my time, I put it on, but usually fall asleep. I can go back, the next day and listen to the whole lot. So I love that about it as well. You're so diligent in keeping us all up to date with that. So I'll drop the link below, so people have got easy access to your website and your Telegram. And yeah, once again, thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Jim. I love you very much, and
All
y'all
right,
take
love
care.
you too. All right, bye everyone, and please like, share, subscribe. Let's get this message out, and this is how we can help um, share whatever we hold close to our heart. So, bye.
Bye, guys.